Hey guys, I am excited to do an Instagram Live with you today. And I'm doing one where I'm going to answer some questions, but I'm going to invite Lola Priego of Base, a blood testing company, on to answer some questions for you about blood testing. So stick with me here for a second while I bring them in. Happening right now. Murphy Sales, you don't know why you're following me, so adios. It's probably a good choice, Murphy. I like that. All right, they should be coming in a second. At least I'm hoping Lola does. In the meantime, well, you guys want to know something about blood testing? Ask questions. Hey, there's Leslie at the beach. I wish I was there. Clean Rights in Houston. Iffy 2026. Man, it's an iffy 2020, isn't it? But I like your name anyway. And you're welcome for my work. Godly Massage. That's a serious name right there. This is Craig McCloskey. Man, I love just seeing people all over the place doing this. And from Italy, all right, that's cool. Well, let's talk about lab testing. Right now, there's a lot of people saying, Dave, what kind of lab tests should I be doing? What's important, what's not important? Here's the most important lab test you can get right now. And that comes down to, well, I just got something that Lola can't join from Instagram. Thanks, Instagram. Love you guys. Anyway, I'm going to answer questions about it anyway. So what you'll find is that getting your vitamin D tested right now would be a really good idea. In fact, I just had mine tested and my levels were 87. And I got mine tested with Get Base. That's get_base. In fact, I'm going to tag them in this. They're probably going to answer questions by doing. Razel says, what I do to my hair. Be honest. You know, I will be honest. Oh, hold on. I might be able to get Lola in here. View requests. Come on, Instagram. You can do it. Yeah. Let's make this work. Let's make this work. If this doesn't work, I'm just going to do it. So you want your levels of vitamin D. Hey, there's Lola.
Hey, Dave.
Hey.
How's it going?
It is going very, very well. I'm happy we get to answer questions for people about testing. I was just telling them, as you were working to get joined, that I got my results back from GetBase, and my vitamin D levels were about 90. And I like to get my levels to between 70 and 90. And during the cold and flu season every year, regardless of what strains are floating around, you really ought to have vitamin D levels higher like that. And in this year's unusually dramatic environment, we have pretty good evidence that 80% of people who end up in the hospital had low vitamin D levels. So if you get this is 90 on a blood test for vitamin D. So do you remember, do you know off the top of your head, what are the metrics for the level of vitamin D on the test that you guys do?
Yeah, we typically recommend in between 30 to 90-ish or 85. Ideally, we recommend people to be in between 75 and 80 just to prevent those who over supplement too. Just something that that people don't know is that if you get too much vitamin D, that's also not ideal. Yep. So we try to keep them in between around 80, basically. I mean, you got to tell me how you get to 80 to 90, because it's really hard to get it all the way up there.
Well, when you need to take vitamin D3, this is from Sabine who's asking, because vitamin D3 is the active form. They put vitamin D in milk, which is actually not the right kind of vitamin D. So the 90, it's nanograms per milliliter, if I remember right, but they're the same unit, at least in every country that I'm familiar with. We all use that same unit of measure. And so the way I got it up there, and it's because I test. It turns out I did a test from the DNA company that showed me that I had a genetic issue with my vitamin D receptors. So for me, it takes 15,000 IUs of vitamin D every day and some sunlight exposure, even though I'm in Canada, so that barely counts. I have to do that in order to get my levels up. But that means 80% of people who end up in the hospital with the current virus have low vitamin D levels and a bunch of other metabolic problems. So getting your vitamin D levels up is a good idea, but you might need 5,000. right? So you don't know what your vitamin D receptors are. You have your skin color and you have your genetics. So I basically have the sun requirements as if I was black, according to the genetic test. They're like, Dave, you need a whole lot of sun. You should live on a Pacific island somewhere right near the equator. But I have this really pale skin, which is unfortunate. But if I don't supplement, I can't get my levels up unless I burn the heck out of myself. So the way I did it is I tested for years. I did 5,000, I did 10,000, I did 15,000. And that's how I did it. But for everyone listening, if you don't test, you don't know if you need 5, 10, 15, or maybe less. And that's why GetBase is something that's interesting to me. So tell me about GetBase, how this whole thing works. I just got my results back, and we talked about it on the podcast. But just kind of share how the system works.
Yeah, and really quickly too on that vitamin D comment, we see a lot of people that are deficient that take vitamin D supplementation as well. So the classic, like, I'm good, I take vitamin D supplements from here and there. Oh, I go outside and I walk. And then you get tested, and the reality is that there are also other things preventing the absorption of that vitamin D. So as you said, for me, it's always critical to monitor and keep an eye on it. Also to stay motivated, because it's hard to, take supplements day after day after day. So it's just kind of, the gamification of it, just to keep you engaged with your levels. And then for base, well, we are really exciting. We are launching more broadly in January. We've revamped the whole product, and basically what we are trying to do is to help people monitor and figure out what's going on with their sleep, with their diet, with their stress, their brain fog, their fatigue. So we've identified the key factors from your biochemistry. That means your hormone, your vitamins, your micronutrients are key for your, let's say, for example, your sleep, right? So not only we have the circadian rhythm, but we have inflammation that could also prevent you from a good night's sleep. We have stress that can also prevent you from a good night's sleep, and even vitamin D. So what we do at Base is we ask you a few questions about what are your goals, and we allow you to track a given area with lab tests that you can take directly at home, or you can walk into a Quest Diagnostics if you prefer. And then within 5 to 7 business days later, you get a notification in your app, you get your results, you get a few recommendations. So we match your results with clinical trials, and we give you a little bit of insight into what supplements you could be taking, what dietary changes will help you improve your levels, and so forth.
There's a question here about MTHFR, which is a genetic variant, one that I have, that controls how you metabolize things. Now, do you guys test for MTHFR or just the markers you see as a result of having MTHFR?
For now, we are focused on the markers that you see. So we are more focused on that thing that you can control and you can track. Now, let's say that someone, for example, gets really frustrated with certain levels, or that they cannot get their vitamin D level up. Then we do have actually special lab testing for certain individuals, or we can even look into genetic testing, SIBO tests, and a few other things that are not widely available, but on a one-off case, we can certainly do for our users.
What you guys will see when you order your GetBase stuff, if you decide to do it, and by the way, you guys have like a massive sale right now, which is one of the reasons I wanted to do it live, because people can save $200 on it. What I found in my results is my homocysteine levels. And there's 3 markers of inflammation that I have told people forever you need to be doing, for 10, 11 years on the blog in all of my books. And one of them is C-reactive protein, and that's in there. And the other one is homocysteine. So if you go on the Bulletproof diet and you stop eating inflammatory vegetables, you eat the good vegetables, you stop eating bad oils and industrially raised animals because they're inflammatory, and you start eating some saturated fat, which is what your cells are halfway made out of, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I feel good. Most people, their blood work changes. They're like, I'm so happy. And some people, it doesn't do what they want, and their homocysteine goes up. And those are usually people with MTHFR variants. So when you get your GetBase test, and that goes up, you have an MTHFR problem almost always. You can get a genetic test for it. I like the DNA company for that. But even if you don't have the genetic test, you can take methyl donors, things like methylfolate, which is a very important thing to be able to get anyway. And so this is like folic acid, except it's the kind everyone can use. So if you do that, maybe something called betaine or trimethylglycine, and all of a sudden those levels fix themselves. And what would you say if someone had high levels of C-reactive protein? What would that indicate?
So many things. So, we talked about sleep, brain fog, fatigue. I mean, we all know, maybe not all, but inflammation is just your worst enemy. So there are a lot of things that we can start doing when, you get your CRP results back, depending on what you're struggling with. We're going to start matching, again, your data with this data from clinical trials. We're going to start looking into potential causes of inflammation too. Again, sugar being a potential cause, people eating a lot of fried food. So depending on what your habits are, we're going to start tweaking some of the things that you do in your day-to-day. Of course, BASE is also going to recommend things like, cold exposure, although not everyone is, able to go that route, but it really works, or cryotherapy. So depending on your levels, again, we will look into different type of interventions that we can start implementing to get your levels down again, and getting ready to test back again, because the thing about this and the beauty is that it's something that you can control. It's something that is in your hand, and there's nothing like seeing your CRP results, seeing that they are a little bit high, and you quitting your fried food.
I love that answer. And what's going on here is, look, you're saying, I want to be healthy this year, maybe more than you did in years before, because you realize that your risk of all-cause mortality goes up when you're unhealthy. I used to weigh 300 pounds, guys. I had arthritis when I was 14. I had high C-reactive protein, high homocysteine, and bad everything. And I'm sitting here now, and my brain works better now than it did when I was 25. In fact, my brain response time is that of a 20-year-old on quantitative measures. My arteries are that of a 25-year-old on quantitative measures. So if I was able to undo all the crap that I dealt with, I promise you that you're going to have an easier time of it than I did. But if you don't have the data, you will never know that, oh, I have a problem metabolizing certain types of B vitamins, and that it's putting a load on me that I cannot see. And that's why, for me, testing is so incredibly important. The problem is, going into the doctor's office and going to have some blood tests, they don't even test the right stuff. Like, oh yeah, your liver and kidneys are fine, see ya, or your cholesterol's too high, because they lowered the level of cholesterol to sell more cholesterol drugs that you shouldn't really be taking anyway 99% of the time. So unless you go with a functional medicine doctor, you're just not going to know what to do, and then you got to pay for an appointment and all that. So I have, for years, said we have a fundamental human right to have access to our own data, and we shouldn't need a permission slip to do it. And so the idea to be able to do at-home testing, like with GetBase, is the right way to do it. And so you do need to get a blood draw, but you can get that done at home or at various places where it can get done. And it's a much lighter weight and much more affordable option, because it's not like only people like me who actually spent $1 million first fixing myself and then upgrading my biology and getting younger and writing books about it and being a guinea pig and all that. No one needs to do that unless you're looking to find new stuff. But it should be accessible to all of us. And so this is a way of saving money. And for you guys, since this is a major sale, like, if you're going to get tested, this would be a good time to do it. Applejack says, aren't there other indicators of inflammation? There are hundreds of indicators of inflammation. These are the low-hanging fruit. And there's one, I don't know, Lola, are you guys going to be offering, actually you do offer LPA, right? But not LPPLA2 yet. Can you talk about LPA as a marker of inflammation?
We actually only offer that if you are able to visit a Quest Diagnostics. Again, like, there are certain tests that are a little bit more complicated to do through a regular finger prick testing. I am not super familiar with LPA exactly on which of the processes LPA is involved. But again, this is something that we look into after we looked into others like homocysteine or CRP. CRP is typically one of our first areas to look into, because, as you said, we have what we call pathways, right? Like, at the end of the day, your body works in certain ways that your hormones are going to get altered, your vitamins, your micronutrients, your immune response also gets severely affected if you have inflammation up. So we have all of these other markers to look into first. And then depending on what are your results, if we are trying to understand, hey, your CRP results are really high, that's when we start digging. and covering other biomarkers that are not that popular to help you investigate and get to the root cause of it. Because something that it's common that we see at base a lot is people that they cannot lose weight and they blame themselves. You think that you're not doing, everything that you could be doing. The same thing for sleeping, right? You tend to blame yourself. It's like, maybe I'm doing something wrong, when the answer is really in your blood, it's in your biomarkers. So the most common theme for us is, don't blame you. It's not you, it's in your blood.
It's not a moral failing. It's not a lack of effort. It's a hardware problem. And when I understood that my cognitive dysfunction, I couldn't remember stuff, I couldn't pay attention. I worked out an hour and a half a day, 6 days a week, a low-calorie diet. I did that for 18 months, and I still had a 46-inch waist when I was done. I was like, I'm eating too much lettuce, clearly. And it was that final realization that I have a hardware problem. There's a cellular biology problem, right? And I've got to fix that. And when you do that, it takes away all the guilt about that. And you're like, oh, this is data. This is how my body is responding to things. And if you have a hard time sleeping, you're getting sick more than you like to, you can't lose weight, and you do the test, and it says, oh, you have a C-reactive protein problem. You might have something in one of your teeth. You might have a low-grade infection. You could have something in your sinuses like I used to, especially if you've been in a house with toxic mold. You could be in a house with toxic mold. You could be overtraining. All of those will raise your C-reactive protein. But now you know there actually is inflammation. It's also possible, hey, you have an emotional eating problem. By the way, my new book, if you guys haven't done this yet, please pre-order Fast This Way. You can go to fastthisway.com or just go to wherever you like to buy books. But if you send me a receipt, I'll teach you how to do fasting. And fasting, it's that same thing. Okay, would fasting lower your C-reactive protein? It probably would. But you want to get through the mental aspects of why do I have inflammation? Because you just don't know. But if you don't have inflammation, hallelujah, right? My guess is that if you order Get Base, you're going to find that you have some B vitamin problems you didn't know about, and that'll show in your homocysteine, and you're probably going to have some C-reactive protein. Like, I wonder if I'm overtraining or undertraining. And then you've got a directional thing, and then you can do some things to fix it, and then you can test again in 6 months and say, oh, look, I fixed it. One example of how important that is, I tracked my levels, and they were pretty good. And then when I was doing early experiments with ice baths, before it became a thing, this was about 10 years ago, well, I kind of fell asleep with some ice packs on my upper arms and my abdomen. You're not supposed to do that. And how can you fall asleep with ice packs? Ice feels good when you're used to it. Anyway, I woke up an hour and a half later. I was like, oh, that's no problem. Shouldn't have fallen asleep. But the next day I had first-degree ice burns all over 15% of my body. And my C-reactive protein levels went through the roof, and they stayed there for 2 months as my body healed. So that was an injury, right? Likewise, if you lift real heavy, and then you'll have inflammation for a day or two, healthy inflammation. Chronically elevated, bad news. So you guys have to know this. And it's so important, and it's a few $100. And it's one of the things, if you do this even once a year, it's going to tell you more than you're likely to get if you go into the doctor and they hit your knee with a hammer and stuff like that, which is what they used to do. Question about microbe toxicity exposure. Those are pretty advanced tests. I'm a huge fan of them, but you guys aren't doing LPS or anything like that, right? Because these are like your base results.
Yep, not at the time. Again, I think that given that we have partnerships with a lot of tests and we have an in-house science team, depending on your type of membership and what we've discovered on the initial test, we can always go above and beyond for our members and try to get them the test that will get them the answers that they need. But we typically go and check the primary biomarkers to understand first what we would need to explore.
It's such an important thing to do. And we're at this point where some people have access to a good functional medicine practitioner who can help them unpack it all. But now you can actually get the results, look at it, take care of the low-hanging fruit yourself, and you might not even need to do anything. You adjust your supplements, you adjust your lifestyle. And then if there's something more, you guys are going to say, hey, you need to go dig deeper, which I think is really helpful. It's just about making it easier to do. And
also, I have to yet see a person that eats absolutely optimal across the board in all primary biomarkers. And we also get all kind of biohackers and people working really hard, but we are humans at the end of the day. And what you also said, we have genetic tendencies to be deficient in certain things or, to have certain imbalances. So this is something that I've discovered for myself. I was following the Bulletproof diet, just kind of doing everything by the book. And then I started getting tested and I'm like, oh, like this is not working for my thyroid, right? Like this type of low carb diet is not working for my thyroid and a few other things.
Right.
So it's just those things, simple things first for us.
The other thing that a lot of us tell ourselves is, hey, I'm going to get all of my nutrients from Mother Nature. Bad idea, because you don't get all of your toxins from Mother Nature. And if we all lived, 500 years ago, or maybe longer, because we had a lot of coal burning back then even. But let's say we had all access to clean air, clean water, and natural wild food. You might be able to pull that off. However, now our food has less nutrients and we have way more toxins. So even if you do eat perfectly, there's a really strong argument for taking supplements, or at least measuring, do you have enough copper or too much copper? Do you have enough zinc? And knowing these things from the test, like, that's important. And so you can say, I can save money on supplements. I don't need these because I have it. Or, wow, I'm going to fix this problem. And then my energy levels go up. So for me, testing is awesome. It can be quite expensive if you don't do it right, if you don't get the base levels of the things that are most important. And I like what you guys are doing, because you came up with a set recipe of things like, oh, these are the ones to know about. And that's cool. How do you make recommendations? Like, how do you know to tell someone, oh, this is too high or this is too low?
So this is something that we thought a lot about. And the answer is combining data with human knowledge. Something that I think that we should start doing within healthcare is to make more data-driven decisions. A doctor, at the end of the day, is a data scientist. It's a UX person, right? And it's the person that has to gather all of the data and create the proper output and recommendation. And that's just really hard to do as a human, because maybe you are seeing a functional medicine doctor or a doctor that is used to see all kind of, let's say, men in between 40 and 60 years old. And when you go in and you're a man or a woman of 20 years old, you may be an outlier and your body may function differently than what that doctor is used to see. So what we do at Base is we match your data with clinical trial studies that we've data mined. We've created a database with all of this information. And then we have bi-weekly reviews with functional medicine doctors and nutritionists that are experts in the field. So we anonymize the data and we pull up use cases. And we are like, hey, this person came to us, they couldn't sleep, their melatonin was super low, and this is what the algorithm is recommending. This is the type of supplements, these are the type of dietary or lifestyle recommendations. What do you think? So we can make sure that we are always enhancing our algorithms.
The one thing I found in my results is the standard of care for cholesterol level is too low. But you guys are following the standard of care, usually because insurance carriers make you do it. So when they lowered the levels to 200 without accounting for whether you have high HDL, which is good, and whether your LDL is oxidized and things like that. So there's some things where you've got to decide what you want your levels to be for anti-aging or for performance. But overall, I was very happy with the way you analyzed the data that was in my results. And someone here, probably Caesar, my guess, D Caesar Salad, cool name, says hormones play a bigger role than we think. And funny enough, you get your hormone levels when you do your GetBase test, which is why it's a good deal, because you're getting inflammation, you're getting nutrients, you're getting hormones, you're getting blood lipids. Talk to me about the hormones that you measure with GetBase and why anyone should care about those.
Well, the ones that we look into, for example, for your sleep tests, would be starting with melatonin. We also look into your cortisol levels throughout the day. This is the benefits of doing saliva testing, that we can get you, one full day getting multiple samples, so we can look into how those levels evolve. Another panel that I really like is thyroid testing, specifically for diet. If you're feeling tired, a lot of people are having basically hypothyroidism is a disease that we don't know why, but it's growing more and more. I don't know if it's the meat in this country that it's full of antibiotics. I don't know what's going on.
The major trigger for Hashimoto's. In fact, it's probably the biggest trigger right now, and just chronic stress. And women get Hashimoto's more than men. and women tend to be more sensitive to stress than men because you already have a higher variance on a monthly basis. There's times when you should just be resting, right? And so we all tend to push ourselves too hard. So the more type A you are, I have Hashimoto's as well, although I don't have the antibodies present the vast majority of the time, but you put me in a moldy building, the antibodies come back. So it's a very complex thing, but everyone listening, anyone who's read one of my books knows, get your thyroid levels. Unless everything's working perfectly well. And if you're over 40, get your thyroid levels because they just start to decline a little bit. And they go, oh, that's normal for your age. I'm like, I want to be normal for being 35. I don't want to be normal for being 105. Because when I'm 105, I'd like to be closer to 35 in every way I can do, which is pretty cool. There's a couple of questions in here about what kinds, like, do you have to get your blood drawn? Can you just do a blood stick? Like, talk about that.
Yes, so we have 3 types of doing your test. You have choice over 2. You can do your test at home, or you could do it at a Quest Diagnostics. Typically, you can walk in and out with the Base app. It's about 10 minutes average. It's pretty quick. The only downside, it's for those people who are concerned about COVID exposure. And then if you rather test at home, really accessible. You don't have to do anything. The test, you do a finger prick or a saliva testing, depending on what test do you have. Now, if you are one of those that you're scared about those finger prick tests, I have to promise that I have yet to see a person that does a finger prick and they say, this is awful. The reaction is typically the same, like, oh, this is, way better than what I thought it was. Additionally, we have finger prick tutorials and training sessions. You can FaceTime with one of our team members for 5 minutes and we walk you through it. You just have to drink a lot of water and massage your finger prior. And those would be the ways to get your base levels tested.
It's pretty cool. You basically have a little thing you put up against your finger, press a button like a ballpoint pen button. It goes dunk, and then you're like, oh, and it doesn't hurt much at all, and you don't have to like see a needle or anything. It's literally like dink, and then you squeeze your finger and blot it on the thing, and you're good to go. It's not difficult to do. Let's see. There were a couple more questions here about. I just scrolled off the screen about like. Yeah, I want to draw my own blood. Oh, people were saying, what's the website and what's the discount code if they need one for the sale you're having now?
So the website is get-base.com. And if you go to get-base.com/Dave, you can get 20% off.
Oh, there you go. And that's like a major savings. I'm typing in for you guys. get-base.com/Dave. I think you need the code Dave probably also, is my guess, but I'm not sure. But guys, I just wanted to share this with you and get you introduced to Lola. We talked on Bulletproof Radio recently, and just the deal is, all right, now is a good time to know your vitamin D levels. And if all you did was get your vitamin D levels out of this test, you would have good results. If you are low, and you probably are, just take more vitamin D. And if you do that, your odds of like being stronger and having few issues go up. I've had my vitamin D levels up where I want them for years. I don't get sick very often. It's pretty amazing. And you're talking to a guy who was on antibiotics every month for 15 years because of chronic sinusitis. I was the guy who would get sick first every time. And until all this pandemic nonsense, I flew 150 days of the year and I didn't get sick, right? So you can go from being not resilient to being resilient, and you've got to have some data to do that. So I want you guys to have the ultimate level of resilience so that you can wear a mask, but you have an inner mask that you always wear. It's called your immune system and your metabolism. And you can actually make that work. And vitamin D is one of the easiest things to do. Zinc is another thing to do. And this is for general wellness and immunity all the time. Not just for a specific, oh, I'm worried this year versus another year. This is a standard thing you always do. And that way, if something that no one's ever noticed before is floating around, you're still protected as best you can be. And that's how you do it. Oh, Darcy just posted the link to the recent podcast, Bulletproof Radio, episode 761. We talk more in more detail about these blood markers and what you can do and how to get it. And I have no idea why CEO of someone or other is posting links to Pornhub. I would like to thank you, because if you lab test on Pornhub, there's a whole genre for that. But Lola, you and I are going to get into that today.
Not today.
These trolls, you guys always lose. All right, I got to answer one question that has some nutrient levels, but not necessarily ones you test. There's been a couple people saying, Dave, you have the hair of a great golden god. I'm translating what they said. But basically, there's a whole episode on Bulletproof Radio with Alan Bauman. I decided about a year ago, all the guys in my family on both sides are bald by the time they're 30. So I have like the worst hair genetics ever. I was able to hang on till my mid 40s pretty well. And I was like, I'm getting a little thin here. So I did what any good biohacker would do. I went in, I found the best guy in the country. We did a whole podcast with video and everything so you guys can see what I did. And we moved 10,000 individual hair follicles, like bloop, bloop. So we planted hair here. So it's there. And then I did all the other stuff Alan talked about, including adequate nutrients. I will tell you, if your zinc levels are low, your hair will look like crap. If your thyroid is low, your hair will look like crap. So you've got to get your internal stuff done. And if that stuff still isn't working, you can do some heavy duty hacking like I did, but you don't have to do that. Actually, my hair was still pretty good. I mostly was like, hey, I'm a guinea pig. I'll do almost anything. I've bone marrow and all that kind of weird stuff. But I will tell both men and women, thyroid levels and zinc, hair, it totally works. Am I speaking the truth?
Totally.
All right. And if your cortisol levels and C-reactive protein are high, what will your hair do?
Probably fall. It depends on like what your genetics, but yeah, if your cortisol levels are high, your hair is going to probably fall, especially if you're a guy. I mean, it can also fall in women. A woman is typically more common with iron deficiency or around pregnancy, but that's something that you don't want to be in that position.
No, you don't. So on that note, I want to say thank you for spending time with the Dave Asprey community here on Instagram. Lola, keep offering good quality, affordable lab tests people can do at home. It is a fundamental human right, and it's one of the things that you can do to fight back against all sorts of nonsense that you're going to get told. The average risk for anything is for average people. You don't have to be an average person. And the way you know you're not an average person is you look at your levels of stuff and go, oh, that's funny. I'm one of the few people who has adequate vitamin D. Therefore, I'm not average. Therefore, my risk is lower of all-cause mortality. Whether you're worried about one specific thing or another, that's up to you, right? So what I'm saying there is be healthy, be resilient, and it comes from inside your cells. And the data is what tells you to do that. And if you guys go to get-base.com/Dave, you can save a bunch of money. You don't have to go to the doctor's office. You can get good data, and then you can go to the doctor's office if you need to. And it's just better and more convenient, and that's how it's supposed to be. So thank you, guys. Thank you, Lola.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.